Laurelwood, Oregon, a small town on the edge of the pine forest, 100 miles west of the nearest city. During the day, it was so quiet you could hear rain dripping from the eaves after a storm. But at night, Laurelwood changed. Peaceful, yet silent enough to feel unsettling. In the spring of 2017, two high school seniors, Lila Brooks and Evan Miller, disappeared from a year-end party on the outskirts of town. By the next morning, only one of them came back, and from that night on, Laurelwood was never the same again. Lila Brooks was 17. She had that kind of quiet confidence that made people turn to look twice, not because she wanted attention, but because she carried something untamed behind her eyes. Her mother described her as curious. Her friends said she was restless. She liked walking alone, especially near the woods behind her family's house, where the trees grew so close together that even in daylight, you could lose sight of the road in a few steps. Evan Miller was 18, a quiet boy with a nervous smile, the type who never said much until you got to know him. He'd grown up in Laurelwood all his life, and unlike most of his classmates, he didn't dream about leaving. He was the kind of person who believed that if you stayed long enough in one place, you could understand it. Every path, every sound, every silence. Lila thought that made him naive. Evan thought it made her brave.
They'd been together for 7 months. It started during the autumn fair, when Lila had been standing near the old carousel, hair tied up, wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big for her. Evan remembered that she didn't smile first. She just looked at him and said, "You look like someone who doesn't belong here." He'd laughed, and she didn't. That was the beginning. By the time spring came, they were inseparable. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. But in truth, their relationship had begun to feel like something caught between 2 seasons, too new to fade, but too fragile to last. Lila talked about leaving town after graduation. Evan didn't want to hear it. On the night of May 27, 2017, Greenfield High held its end-of-year party at a cabin near the old quarry, just a few miles outside town. It was one of those nights that the kids of Laurelwood would talk about for years. Music echoing through the woods, the smell of beer, and a sky so clear it looked endless. Lila and Evan arrived together just before 10 p.m. They parked his old Toyota near the edge of the clearing and walked toward the bonfire that burned in the center of the field. Someone had brought speakers. Others were already dancing barefoot on the grass. It was the last night of school, the beginning of summer, the end of everything familiar. They stayed close for a while, talking, laughing, moving through the crowd, but people noticed that after midnight, something changed. A classmate named Rachel saw them near the tree line, arguing quietly. No shouting, no scene, just the kind of tense whispering that made people turn away. Then, around 12:40, Evan was seen walking back alone toward the fire. Lila wasn't with him. When asked later, Evan said Lila wanted to be alone for a bit. She'd told him to go back, said she'd follow soon. He waited. 15 minutes passed, then 30. By 1:15 a.m., he started walking around the cabin, calling her name. No answer. He thought maybe she'd gone to cool off near the quarry. The path led down a small slope behind the cabin, so he grabbed a flashlight from the car and went looking. The woods were silent, except for the faint hum of distant music. He said later that he remembered the air being strangely cold that night, colder than it should have been for May. At 1:50, when he returned to the clearing, the fire was dying down. Most of the partygoers had left. Her car was still there. Her phone, jacket, and small silver pendant were gone. By 3 a.m., Evan called the police. The first officers arrived 40 minutes later. At that hour, Laurelwood was wrapped in fog, the kind that settles over everything like dust. The report they filed read simply, "Missing person, last seen near quarry." The next morning, search teams began sweeping the woods. The quarry trail ran alongside the lake, a quiet, glassy body of water locals called Laurelwood Lake, though it was technically a reservoir. They brought dogs, boats, and volunteers. Nothing. No footprints beyond the slope, no signs of struggle. For the first week, everyone believed she had simply run away. Teenagers in small towns did that all the time. But by the second week, that explanation stopped making sense. Her wallet was still at home, her ID, even her toothbrush. Detectives questioned Evan several times. His story didn't change. He said they had argued about her plans to leave town, about how he didn't understand her need to go. He said she asked him to let her walk home alone. He thought it was just another fight. He thought she'd call him in the morning. There were no suspects, no witnesses, just a girl who walked into the night and never came back. For months, Laurelwood buzzed with rumors. Some said Lila had fallen into the lake and drowned. Others whispered about an older man she had been seen talking to downtown, someone from out of town driving a black pickup. None of it was confirmed. Evan stopped going to school. He spent most of that summer near the lake, sitting on the wooden pier where they used to watch the sunset. He said he felt like if he waited long enough, she might come back the same way she left, quietly, without warning. In September, the case went cold. Her photo, the one with the faint smile and wind in her hair, stayed pinned to the notice board inside the Laurelwood Sheriff's Office. Below it, a small note in faded ink, missing since May 27, 2017.
3 months later, a hunter found something near the northern edge of the lake, a piece of jewelry half buried in the mud. It was a small silver pendant, shaped like a crescent moon. Evan confirmed it was Lila's. He said she'd been wearing it that night. Search teams returned to the area, combing the shoreline again. They found nothing else. No traces, no footprints, no signs of a body. By the end of the year, even the most persistent searchers began to give up. Lila's parents moved away the following spring. They said they couldn't bear to stay in the house anymore. Her room untouched, her books still stacked on the nightstand, a half-written letter on her desk addressed to no one. Evan remained in Laurelwood. He worked part-time at the gas station near the main road, lived in a small rented cabin near the woods. People pitied him quietly. Some still suspected him. Others thought he was just another victim of something no one could name. He said little about that night, except once, in a recorded interview 2 years later. When asked what he remembered most, he said, "The sound of her footsteps fading, and the way the forest swallowed it like it didn't want to give it back." Time moved differently in Laurelwood after Lila disappeared. For a while, the town seemed to pause, like it was holding its breath. But life, as it always does, found ways to move on. The kids who were at that party graduated, left for college, started new lives. The quarry was fenced off, and the cabin eventually collapsed under a heavy winter. But Evan stayed. He said he couldn't leave. He rented the small cabin his uncle owned by the lake, a single room with a wood stove and a view of the water through the trees. To most people, it looked like he was waiting for something that would never come. But in truth, he wasn't waiting. He was listening. He often walked the same path that led from the cabin to the quarry trail. He'd follow it down to the water's edge, stop where the trees opened up just enough to see the lake shimmer between their trunks. That was where searchers had found her pendant. He said sometimes, when the fog rolled low and the surface was perfectly still, he could almost see her reflection standing on the opposite bank, like she was waiting for him to say something. For years, there was nothing new, just silence, the kind that changes shape over time, from grief to fear to something that feels like acceptance. though it never truly is. Then, in 2020, something strange happened. In March, the Laurelwood Sheriff's Office received an envelope addressed simply to the detective who still cares. No return address, no fingerprints. Inside was a single handwritten letter. It read, "You stopped looking for her too soon. You searched the wrong side of the lake. She didn't drown. She was taken. The one you should have questioned isn't the boy. It's the man who came every Friday, the one with the camera. Check the old maintenance road behind the quarry. You'll find what you missed." It was signed with 2 initials, A.B.
Detective Warren, the officer who had handled the case in 2017, came out of retirement to review it. The name A.B. didn't match anyone in the original files. The only person who ever came forward with those initials was a former teacher from Greenfield High who had died 3 years earlier. Still, the mention of a man with a camera caught Warren's attention. Several witnesses back then had recalled seeing a photographer taking pictures during the bonfire, someone no one recognized, driving a dark truck. Police had followed the lead briefly, but it had gone nowhere. Warren decided to reopen the case quietly. He visited the maintenance road mentioned in the letter, a narrow dirt trail long overgrown by moss and pine roots. It led about a mile north of the quarry, ending at a rusted metal gate. Behind it was a small clearing, barely large enough for a car to turn around. There was nothing there. But as he walked the edge of the clearing, Warren noticed something half buried under the brush, a strip of weathered blue cloth, like part of a jacket sleeve. Tests later showed it contained faint traces of human DNA. Not enough for confirmation, but enough to raise questions. When the news reached Evan, he didn't say much. He told a local reporter, if someone took her, they already took everything. That same summer, the lake's water level dropped lower than it had in decades due to a drought. Local fishermen began finding old debris near the shore, tires, rusted metal, even the frame of a bicycle. On July 11th, a man named Henry Cole called the sheriff's office to report something unusual: an old backpack wedged between 2 rocks about 20 feet from the northern bank. Inside, they found a notebook nearly ruined by water. Most pages were blank or unreadable, but one section near the middle was still legible. It contained several handwritten entries, none dated, in Lila's handwriting. Most of the notes were short observations. "The woods are louder at night than I thought," or "He said not to tell anyone where we were going." It wasn't clear who he referred to. Some believed it was Evan. Others thought it pointed to the man with the camera. When the news released that information, rumors spread fast again. Old wounds reopened. People who had once pitied Evan now looked at him differently. Reporters returned to Remsford, knocking on doors, asking questions no one wanted to answer.
Evan stopped showing up at work. His neighbors said his cabin light stayed on all night for weeks. Then, one morning in late August, he drove to the sheriff's office and turned in a letter of his own. He didn't say where he found it or why he wrote it then. It read, "I never hurt her, but I didn't stop her either. She wanted to leave that night, and I let her. I don't know where she went, but I think she was meeting someone who promised her something better. I remember headlights by the road when I drove away. I remember a voice telling me to forget what I saw, but I can't. Every night, I see her standing by the lake. Sometimes she's calling me. Sometimes she's walking away. Either way, I can't tell which version of her is real anymore." After that, Evan left Laurelwood. No one knows exactly where he went. Some say he moved south, others that he disappeared into the mountains. His cabin stood empty for months, until the landlord finally sold it. When the new owners came to clear the place, they found one thing left behind, a small wooden box on the windowsill overlooking the lake. Inside was the same silver pendant the police had collected 3 years earlier, wrapped in a torn piece of notebook paper that read simply, "In case she comes back." That was the last trace of Evan Miller. In the years that followed, Laurelwood grew quieter. The quarry was sealed off permanently. The lake level rose again, hiding everything beneath its surface. The story of Lila Brooks faded into local folklore, the kind of tale parents told their children when the fog rolled in at night. Every now and then, someone claimed to have seen something, a girl walking near the waterline, hair damp, eyes dark, vanishing between the trees before anyone could reach her. Most brushed it off as imagination. Others swore it was real. In 2023, a local diver exploring the southern side of the lake captured something strange on his underwater camera, a faint shape near the bottom, about 30 feet down. He said it looked like part of a car door, but when police returned to investigate, the object was gone. The file was reopened briefly, then closed again. The final note in the report read, "Inconclusive evidence. Case remains unsolved." Today, if you drive west from the city and follow the narrow highway through the trees, you'll reach Laurelwood in less than 2 hours. You'll see the same wooden sign that's been standing since 1964. "Welcome to Laurelwood, a good place to live." But locals will tell you something different. They'll say that if you stop near the lake at night and listen carefully, you might hear footsteps along the pier, soft, deliberate, circling the water. And if you stay long enough, you might hear a voice whispering from across the fog. Not loud, not clear, just a name, carried by the wind, as if it's still waiting for someone to answer.
Thanks for watching. I hope to see you again in the next videos. Please subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more exciting videos coming soon.